early in the morning when I ride the ball. It's early in the morning when I ride. It's early in the morning when I ride. You know I have a misery in my right side. Good morning. Walter Parks. Per usual, I'm coming to you from St. Louis, Missouri, unless I'm on the road, and oftentimes when I'm on the road, I can't make a broadcast. But I try to be with you every Sunday morning. It's tricky. I think that the key to so much of good performance, the key to so much of just getting through life is just making sure you stay within those parameters of that which you can do well. And I'm constantly going outside of those boundaries. I don't know about you guys, but and when I stay in that, it's not so much a comfort zone, because I like to push myself within that zone, but it takes a sense of honesty to be able to to know what you can accomplish and what you can't accomplish, or what you have a business doing, what you don't have business doing. And I'm a sucker for a challenge, and I always have been. And I think that's just this kind of industriousness that I was taught. And I think you know a certain amount of work or hard times, it doesn't necessarily deter me, but the the trap to that, if you will, is that one can find oneself continuously trying to achieve something that you just can't reach. And I'm most happiest when I give a performance when I stay in that zone. Again, it's not a comfort zone; it's a zone of capabilities, really. Um, because the audience and anybody who cares about you, they want to see you stretch and they want to see you grow. Um, and I'm going completely acoustic this morning because I got a little bit of a delay. Um, Not a sonic delay, but I got a time delay. We were setting up, and I got a call, and I don't normally get a call at 7:30 in the morning, and it was my mother in Jacksonville, Florida, and she was connecting me with my brother. And my brother is kind of you never know where he's going to be. He might call you from the north woods of Canada, and he might call you from Germany, but in this case, he was in Poland. Actually, my brother is helping people, refugees and so on, and so he's near the Ukraine border. And my brother loves boxing, and so he met somebody at the boxing gym who owns some hotels, and the Polish gentleman who owns the hotels has donated his airport shuttles or something of the like to help get people from the Polish border deeper into Poland, where they can be, find shelter and so on. So my brother's doing that, and I'm very, I'm very impressed. That's meaningful work. He doesn't. He's a single man, and he probably just said to himself, "Look, I could really be of use there, and I don't have these entanglements." But I asked him a few questions, and so most of the folks that he is dealing with, who are coming from Ukraine, are of course coming into the far western part of Ukraine, and he reports that most of the folks are seemingly working class folks. They're not. These are not. These are people who are, kind of doing the heavy lifting, so to speak. Probably renters. He said there are a lot of people are bringing pets, and they just have been able to collect what they can throw into a suitcase and wear on their bodies. It's about 45 degrees right there. It's wintertime. It feels like wintertime, but it's not brutal winter. So it's 45 degrees Fahrenheit there now. But he's working. I think you said the 1 to 9 shift or something like that. I think that's what it is. 1 in the afternoon to 9 p.m. And so helping to get these folks to shelter and so on. He said that he has not met any Americans over there. He spoke to a couple of people who were English speaking from New Zealand and so on, but no Americans that he ran into. He doesn't seem to. He did contemplate going into the Ukraine, but he found out that there's about a 2-day wait, 2 or 3 day wait at the border to get from Ukraine back into Poland. So just imagine what that's like without proper facilities, without probably adequate food. You're just out there in the woods on those probably country roads, or maybe it's a highway, or there are trains same, coming out of Kiev, but I think there's also a lot of people that are just walking. But anyway, if I get more information on that, maybe even during the broadcast, I'll let you know. But what a meaningful thing. He didn't speak of, of the need for funding. I'm sure there is. So you guys online can find ways to help and give to get people to safety and so on. He did his own opinion is that Putin is basically trying to take half the country. My brother said, that's how these kind of wars, skirmishes in that area have ended. Is they come in and they invade a whole country and they settle on half of it. So he's postulating that that's the end result. Anyway, good morning. It's Walter Parks. Just a very interesting beginning to a show. And it's certainly a once in a lifetime for anybody who's over there in Poland or Ukraine and so on. The first song was a song that I covered on my new CD, which is called Walter Parks and the Unlawful Assembly. Maybe I have, yes, here's a copy of it. This guy right here. It's a picture of the Selma Bridge on it. Man, isn't it interesting that bridges are just so much a symbol of, I mean, in a certain way, this is a silly statement, but at least bridges have played such a crucial part in it seemingly historically of people trying to better their lives, and that's why I used the Selma Bridge. I walked over the Selma Bridge a couple of years ago, never been there before, and I just had this kind of, it wasn't a creepy feeling, but it was a feeling of, it was kind of reverence, and you might ask, wow, I could put creepy and reverent in the same, confuse the two. I mean, what I meant by creepy is that it was a feeling that overcame me, and I just couldn't avoid it. So it was a feeling of the importance of being there. Not that it was important that I be there, but the name for the group, the Unlawful Assembly, just came to me at that point. The name for the project, because the folks who were marching back in 66 or whenever they did it, 65 maybe, they had tried to exercise their right to vote at the county courthouse over in Selma, and they were denied the right to be there, and they were arrested on charge of unlawful assembly, which is interesting. So I started with a work song, and that was one that was, the song was sort of made known to the world by the work of Alan Lomax, who was and I think his father's name was John Lomax, I'm not sure, but his father went into the Mississippi Delta first, and started recording mostly prison workers and some of the just acoustic guitar blues players in the Mississippi Delta. But the prison workers would all do their tasks in a certain synchronicity. Y'all know the deal. If prison workers were trying to move a piece of railroad track, they would hit it all at the same time, and they did that by singing a chant. And these work chants, in the modern day, have become made into music, and they were just functional at that point. And the head guy on the chain gang who they weren't always chain gangs, but the head guy of the group of prisoners would be the caller, the guy who sang the song, and a lot of times the workers would do the response. So in a situation like early in the morning, it'd be, it is early in the, oh, I've already retuned the guitar, but it's early in the morning, when I rise, Lordy Mama. So, one guy would go, well, it's early in the morning. And then the other guys would go, in the morning. And they would hit the rail. And, caller, well, it's early in the morning. When I rise, Lord, it's so good. That kind of a thing. And so it just kept everybody in time so that that piece of rail could be moved. Anyway, it's kind of a call and response thing. So since since I still have this Taylor, I will continue retuning it. There we go. I play this next one a lot. It's from my Swamp Cabbage repertoire, and it's not. It's a song I recorded on. I wrote on my old 1929 banjo. It's a banjo that I bought in Jacksonville, Florida, years ago. It's probably the instrument. It's my oldest instrument. It's also the instrument that I've had the longest. I'm quite fond of it, but it's a tenor banjo. It's more of something that's used in the Dixieland style, and I always get these ideas and kind of work them out, and then I translate it to the guitar. And this is one I kind of put together on the Intercoastal Waterway in Jacksonville, Florida, down near Palm Valley. My brother got a piece of the. I'm talking about my brother a lot, but that's what he gets for calling me from Poland. Helping out refugees. My brother he's an interesting character. He probably wouldn't even like me talking about him on the air because he's kind of he doesn't like publicity, but we're nostalgic in our family. If we used to, if something was important to us in our youth, if at all possible, we'll just buy it. And my brother and I used to go over State Road 210, I think it is, in Florida. Roughly, today that goes from Starbucks to Publix, But back then it was just a single lane road that just wound around through the palmettos and the marshes and the swampland, and basically cut from US 1 all the way to the beach, A1A. And it dead ended at the beach right around where some Germans during World War II came to land. There was a U-boat off the coast of Florida, and they got out of the U-boat, took a raft, and they landed around Palm Valley, Florida, Ponte Vedra, and they were basically spies, and they were at some point later apprehended up north. I think they made their way up towards Baltimore or something. You guys can Google it, but I think they were executed for treason, but I'm not sure about that. Or for being spies. But so State Road 210 ends at Highway A1A, which goes along the coast in Florida, and we would just drive on that road out there, just a 2-lane road. And you would see eagle, and you would see Florida panthers and all that kind of thing, bear all the time. And there was a bridge, an old bridge that was built in the 20s. It was just, one of those, what do they call it, a drawbridge, that kind of a thing. And it would take forever to. They never built these bridges high enough for people's boats to go under, sailboats. So everybody, it used to irk my father so much. We were kind of a working class family, and my father just gets so pissed that the wealthy people down in Ponte Vedra would hold up 50 cars just so a sailboat with a huge mast could pass under it. And it just made him so mad, and it just kind of ruined our day. But anyway, so when they replaced that bridge, my brother just asked the Army Corps of Engineers if he could buy the bridge, the old pieces of the bridge. And I don't think he had to buy it, but they said, well, if you want to haul this thing out of here and take it out of here, we'll just give it to you, that kind of thing. So the Palm Valley Bridge is in my brother's backyard, and he somehow floated it down the Intercoastal Waterway, and eventually, so I've always had this fantasy of making a stage out of it. It's something, call it the Palm Valley Bridge Festival, PVB Fest. And it's just made of this thick wood, huge planks of wood that are like a foot thick. But anyway, where is this leading me? I can't. Oh, so along that, when I was sitting on the Palm Valley Bridge, that's now in my brother's backyard, I wrote this song. It's called Sugar House. Sugar House. Okefenokee Swamp. See that catfish going upstream, mouth on but a gill for the cream. Caught that catfish by the snout and I turned that catfish inside out by me. Banjo Sam, by me. Banjo Sam. Woo. Tell you where to go, way to country, way below. When you get there, the folks ain't home, and the girls I'm mad 'cause the hair ain't come by me. Banjo Sam, by me. Banjo Sam. Bird sitting on a hickory limb looked at me and I hit him. I picked up a rock and I hit him on the shin. He said, by God, I don't do that again by me. Banjo Sam, by me. Banjo Sam, by me. Banjo Sam. It's fun to play. I'm going down to the Okefenokee Swamp where that song came from. I know that I play that a lot, but the thing is, I think in a certain way, and then I say this and maybe I'll change my mind, but I feel like my mission is kind of narrowing, and that's good, and that's what I started talking about early on. I feel like I have a task to kind of get this music that came from the Okefenokee and most directly anything that the Okefenokee music inspired, or that growing up in Jacksonville, Florida, and that area of the country inspired, and what that did to my music and my feel. That's really all I'm kind of into doing right now. And I've got to, I got to give myself a little talking to every now and then, as Dr. John said. It's there's so many things that I want to do, and at the end of the day, one has to be, as I said earlier, a little honest with oneself. It's like, I would love to record an album of movie songs that have influenced me, and maybe I'll do that down the line. But right now, I feel like I don't want to be distracted from. It's just so challenging to go from the Okefenokee Swamp, talking to somebody who lived out there between, say, 1920 and 1958, and just talking to this guy whose early days were spent living off the land stock, the livestock, and these people would. There were complete homesteaders, and they would, if they needed supplies, they would have to drive 20 miles to Waycross to get them. And from going to that to James Bond Goldfinger or something, it's just too much of a. It's too much of a seesaw, an emotional, mental seesaw for me. So I'm really trying to just kind of focus on this task, and I think that's what you're going to be hearing from me most. Now, I'm not saying I won't play other types of things. For instance, spiritual music kind of came from my interest in spiritual music has come from my interest in the swamp music. Why? Because the Swampers would play hymns, shape note hymns, and they would also deal with or they would be influenced, I think, by the music and the work chants of the people who were there hired to come out in the Okefenokee Swamp and lay the railroad track, who were the black folk, of course. And I say of course because that's kind of the way things were done at that point, that and Chinese labor. But, and so it's my hunch, and I don't know that this for a fact, I don't know that anybody will, but Southern rock and roll and the feel of Southern rock and roll kind of came from that unique mixture of black and white folk down in the swamp. Yes, black and white folk have been in the same space for many, many years, especially down south. But there was more of a separation, I think, In the big house, they were singing Christian hymns and singing the Northern European stuff, but out in the fields, they might have been singing things like Wade in the Water and Follow the Drinking Gourd and Steal Away and that kind of thing. And I don't know that there was as much crossover, but I just can't help but wonder in the more smaller confines of the islands and the swamp if there was a crossover that lasted for years in the form that would become Southern rock and roll. And how that happens is just through people in the area. My conjecture is that, people from towns like Folkestone and Waycross and McClinney, Florida, and Baldwin, Florida, and Lake City, Florida, and Jacksonville, Florida, they all started to, they would listen to each other's music. And why is it that the old timers in Jacksonville, Florida, when I was a kid in the 70s, why is it that they played with this kind of Southern country feel, but it also had a kind of a black funkiness to it, And so that's interesting to me. It's like, why not make that my mission, or one of my missions? Am I the guy to play John Barry music from James Bond? Let other people do that. I'm kind of the guy, or one of the guys, to roll up my sleeves and deal with this swamp stuff. Let me take a sip of coffee here. A friend of mine, Richard Gates, and I don't know if any of y'all know him. He's a bass player in Boston. And this was, I'll just say this was kind of a peace offering that he gave me. It was for personal issues we had, but I like the guy a lot. He endured a heart transplant, and he's still with us. We're talking 20 years ago. And I was considering naming one of my CDs The Ravens Rule Book. And because of that, he gave me this cup. It's kind of a Halloween looking thing. It looks like a face, but it's a raven on top of an ear of corn. I don't know if y'all can see that. Can you see that? Isn't that cool looking? A raven on top of an ear of corn. I'm trying to make it. Yeah, it looks very Edgar Allan Poe-ish. There we go. You can maybe see that a little better. But the reason I wanted to, I was in the school library. I can't remember what I was on the road with Stephanie Winters at the time and the group The Nudes, and our last CD. We knew it was going to be our last CD, and we were looking for a name for it. And I was in a student library in a college in Oneonta, New York, and I don't know the name of that college, but you guys can Google it. I don't really find a necessity to give you all this trivia when people can just look the stuff up. It doesn't really matter. It was a college in Oneonta, New York. I was there because we were playing a place, a little restaurant slash bar in town called the Autumn Cafe. And gosh, we would pack that place out. Yoko Ono had a house nearby, and I think she would come into town and so on. But so I was in the student library looking for ideas for the name of my next record, which would be, it's a fine record. And I was looking through this, you know how in the old days, the ornithologists, I think those are the people who study birds, they would, I guess this was well before, I was thinking, well, it became a tradition of documenting birds and plant life by just drawing them out. Some of these guys are just magnificent artists. And I saw this really detailed painting in a book. It was kind of like a watercolor sort of thing. So it wasn't like an oil painting, but it was one of those scientific drawings of a raven. And I thought, wow, this is fascinating. This is a beautiful picture. I want to use this as the cover. And I looked further at the information, the text that went along with this rendering, this painting of a raven, and it said, raven shot in northern England. So it was killed in northern England. And the date that they shot this raven, which they used to make this painting, was October the 1st, 1958. And that is my exact birthday. And I thought, oh boy. On one hand, maybe that was a sign that I had to use that image, but I just kind of, it just had a dark feeling to it, especially that this raven lost its life on the day that I was born. Now, the Buddhist would have a field day with that, but I shied away from it. It just didn't feel right to me. And so we went another direction. We ended up calling the record Boomerang, which is a little bit banal, but it was one of those, what goes around comes around sort of things. But very proud of that record. And if you get a chance, you've not checked out my work with the group The Nudes, I recommend it. My voice didn't sound the same back then. I was younger, and it was a little bit higher pitched. I sounded more like Michael Jackson at that point in my life. No, I'm just kidding. But it was, I hadn't learned to kind of do my thing, and use the low end of my voice as much. But the music, everything I'm very proud of. We did a good job with it. But anyway, let's see. I'm gonna play one that I started working on last week, and this is I took an old fiddle tune that came out of the Okefenokee, and the archivist from the north, from an area of New York close to Oneonta, which was Ithaca, New York, came all the way down to the Okefenokee swamp once a year, and He, along with his wife, his name was Frances Harper. His wife was Jean Harper, I believe. His wife was the tutor to FDR, not FDR, but FDR's children. She took care of the plants around the house up there on the banks of the Hudson River, and she also was the tutor to FDR's children. And her husband was an archivist and a botanist and a naturalist, and he was fascinated with the Okefenokee Swamp. So every summer, they would go all the way down to southeast Georgia. Can you imagine that trip back then? In between 1900 and she was working with FDR in the early 40s, but this botanist was going down into the swamp from, I think, around 1920 through 1944 or so. And he traipsed down there with equipment that was borrowed from the Library of Congress in Washington. And he was cutting records out in the swamp with a battery-powered lathe. And the concept of a short battery life, and the batteries were no doubt heavy as they could be, just the amount of effort that it took to document this music out in the middle of the swamp, I'm sure it was much more difficult than what Alan Lomax was doing. Alan Lomax, if he had battery-powered equipment, which he probably didn't at that point, but he would have had to have gone into Jackson or a nearby town, but it's a whole different ordeal to leave the swamp, the islands in the swamp, and then go to the nearest town, which was Folkston, Georgia, 10 miles away from dry land. So if you're deep into the swamp, you still have to go another 10 miles before you can recharge the battery. So this is the amount of effort that folks used to go into to preserve culture and history. So this is one that was a fiddle tune, and I've had great fun in trying to translate this to the guitar, which it at times doesn't do so well. But this is one called Hollerin' Joe. And on the original recording, done with just one fiddler, there's no hollering at all. But I'm going to put some hollering in it if I can. Let's see. I'm looking at some of the comments that are coming in. Timothy Bell, Ray's on, Stephen Butler, Kristen Barner he's here, fantastic. Kay Wenzine, yes. Becky's with us, and it's it feels like a family at this point, and the folks who comment are not just the only folks who listen. I do get told that people listen throughout the week, and I think I told y'all at one point I was down in Central Florida at one point playing a gig, and a guy came up to me and we talked a little bit. He goes, "I listen to your show every Sunday morning, and it's kind of become a part of my routine." And I didn't know who he was. He followed my music, but I didn't know him. And once we got to talking, and this guy sells helicopters, and you just never know who you're connecting with in the modern world. But anyway, to anybody who sells helicopters, and to you all in Jersey City, and to you all in the North Woods of Canada, this is a little music from the Okefenokee Swamp in southeast Georgia. Joe from the middle of the road. Oh, Joe, everybody knows a woman can love, but she didn't take your fiddle and boo. Getting a handle on that. It's tricky. You know, you've got on one hand, a fiddle can sort of carry the day. If it's by itself, it's tuned differently, and there's droning that they can do on fiddles. And I'm playing in what guitar players call standard tuning, and I do standard tuning so that I try to stick to standard tuning. And I'm a little bit stubborn that way because I came up studying jazz, and jazz players they're not gonna put the guitar into a fancy tuning. Yes, just I can't do that. You know, that's just too much of a folky move, and so I have a little bit of that stubbornness. But the other thing is that I learned to solo in standard tuning. So if I throw my guitar into another tuning, which I did for Sugar House, this guitar, for instance, listen to this sound. That already sounds like a chord. That's in the tuning of C, and it's low C. I put really thick strings on it. It's 13 gauges, so that I can tune it down. And it doesn't sound all wobbly and like a coffee can full of paper clips. So it's still got a strength and a tension to it, even though it's tuned down because the strings are so thick. But so some of the songs I just go ahead and tune the guitars down. That's why I carry different guitars with me, so I don't have to bore the audience. But when I'm soloing, there was a little part to that tune that I forgot to do. It's kind of like that kind of thing. That's kind of my own little thing. They didn't play that in the Swamp. They wouldn't have been quite that hip, if you will. But I kind of have to throw in a little something for me on each one of these tunes, and I try to play the melodies as they came out of the Swamp, and it's tricky, because the fiddle players are doing these ghost notes and all that stuff, and I just have to translate it to the guitar. But if you listen to the original version, and that's something I wish I had prepared or asked Margot to have ready. But it's going to be too tricky to find. You won't be able to find it, Margot. But it's the hmm, you can't even find it online. It's in the Library of Congress, and they won't. You can find bits of it, but the full versions you can't get unless you make an arrangement with the Library of Congress. But you've got these sort of homesteader people that are not real full time musicians. They're hunters, they're farmers, and they're playing these frolics on the front porches of uh, they station themselves on the front porches. That serves as the stage for a frolic, and all the neighbors come around on the Sundays or Saturday afternoons, and they play banjo music and fiddle music and so on. And on Sunday mornings, they would get together and they do shape note singing, which were essentially I talked about those earlier. They were hymns and that kind of thing. So music was their sort of entertainment and their relief from the the rigors of hunting and trying to live off the land, and there would be certain people out in the swamp who would travel from island to island, and they weren't full time minstrels. Nobody was really out there, but they were known as being more artistic, and so that's where I come in. It was these people. There was namely one person was the most important person out there for sharing music amongst the islands, and his name was Hamp Mizell. I think he died in the 40s. Uh, but uh, but anyway, I've taken some of his music and the music that he used to play, and just trying to give it a little life. On one hand, you could ask, why do you care so much about this whole Okefenokee thing? It's like it's I, I'm fascinated that I'm fascinated by people who had a simple life. A line that stays with me is that line in that Jack Nicholson movie, and I don't even remember the scene. I think he's going into some therapist office, and everybody's in there waiting for their appointment to get with the doctor, and everybody's lives are ostensibly all messed up, and he says to everybody, "What if this is as good as it gets?" Something like that. And that ended up being the name. That was the name of the movie, or the name of the book, or whatever. As good as it gets. But it's these were folks that were making the the most of their lives in the conditions that they had, and to me, that's that's respectable. I'm very proud to know people who live that way. And what I was getting to, and why I brought up the Jack Nicholson thing, because I want to ask y'all, do you kind of go through your lives with this sort of fantasy ever of at some point it's all going to simplify, and you're going to craft the life for yourself that that's just exactly the way you want it. You're just going to wake up in the morning and sit by a fire, or maybe it'll be by the side of a river, and everything will be simple. Maybe you'll have an airstream, and in my case, I envision myself just having one guitar, or something, and just I won't have to do publicity. I won't have to do anything like that, and and I keep remembering Jack Nicholson, and I'm like, maybe I'm never going to get that Airstream guy. Maybe I'm never going to become that guy that just sits by the stream and is content with that. And maybe right now is as good as it gets. And believe me, I am not complaining about my life. I mean, especially when you compare what's going on in Ukraine to what our lives are in this country. I mean, come on, please. But I think the trick of life is, or at least my 2 cents, is again not that sort of quest, this incessant quest, this restless quest to be happy. My father at one time told me that's ridiculous, Walt, happiness. And I thought he was ridiculous at that point. And what I've come to the conclusion of, and I mentioned this a couple of weeks back, is I think contentment is way more important. And not complacency, not just giving up and I don't believe that the Lord's going to provide everything and that we just don't have to do anything. The Lord will provide. I think that's a crock of crap. But I think the Lord provides us with resources. And to the extent that we can employ what's in here and what our talents are, that's what we have to use to find contentment. And I'm enjoying living in Missouri because there's so many people here who come from the farm, and they're not far from the farm. I don't mean physically, but their families were in farms. A lot of people I've met here, and it seeps into the way people do things. It is a can-do state. I love dealing with the contractors here. They're like, if I have an issue or problem that needs to be fixed, they don't try to make it my problem like a lot of folks do on the East Coast. I'm generalizing, but I have a right to because I've lived in the East Coast and I'm now living in the Midwest. People don't try to make it my problem. They're like, well, okay, we can try to figure this out. Yeah, I think I can do that. And I just love that. Yeah, I think we can do that. All right, charge me if you need to. But if it's an issue of money, it's just, I'm talking about the knee-jerk reaction of folks, the industrious folks in the Midwest. I'm loving it. It's like, yeah, we can do that. I like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, I think we can do that. Rather than, yeah, but you told me this that this is gonna, that's the pushback I get in the East Coast. I get so sick of it. I love the East Coast. I'm really an East Coast guy. I really am. I'm never gonna be a Midwest guy. But I'm liking that can-do vibe. I'm liking the people here don't fold. And some of my earliest gigs were in the UP, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And I I have a good friend who used to bring me up there. His name was Mike Ketu. Ketu is Finnish for fox, so his family was Finnish. And he would say, Walt, he would pull out his photo album of all his relatives who came over from Finland, and he said, look at their faces, and they all have scowls on their faces. Every one of them has this scowl, and basically he just, look, the Northern European people who came over here, they just accepted that life was just going to be hard. There's no, the contentment that they derive is just endurance, just in being able to survive all this stuff. And they settled in the Northwest, in the North. They settled in southern Canada. What is it called? The Upper Midwest. Wisconsin and Minnesota, because the weather was similar, and they got the northern lights. So here's a song I'm going to segue into that I like to do. It's one of my favorite new tunes, and I might have even played it last week. I think I did. Should I do this again? I don't want to bore y'all. I won't do it. Now let's do a spiritual. Here's one. I feel like doing it. Anyway, I was going to do one about an old farmhouse in Wisconsin, and I did that last week. but I haven't done this one in a while, and it's tricky. It's an old spiritual. It's called "Steal Away," and it was kind of a what they call a code song. As the lore goes, when the slaves were out and working in the fields, they would start singing "Steal Away," and that meant that one of them was gonna break away that evening, and that part of it was never easy, of course, but they figured they'd fare better taking their chances out on their own than working. So here we go. I believe I'll steal away to Jesus, steal away back home. I'm gonna steal away to Jesus, steal away back home. I'm gonna steal away to Jesus, steal away back home. Oh, but I ain't got long to stay, ain't got long to stay, ain't got long to stay. Steal Away. I love playing that. I got turned on to a song called to a version of a band called the Mighty Clouds of Joy. It's an old recording that I found on YouTube by some radio show in Baltimore, and the Mighty Clouds of Joy were traveling through, and this piece of footage has been preserved forever. Y'all look it up, the Mighty Clouds of Joy, Steal Away. It's just four guys, I think, no drummer, just a guy playing an old 50s Fender Stratocaster and an old Fender Precision bass, and they're just churning it out, and I just love that part of the song. The downbeat on that is just marvelous. You gotta have that. Oh, ain't got long to stay. Ain't got long to... I just love that. I could play that all day long. Woo! I don't know. I'm going to do a couple more things for you. I feel like playing another spiritual. This is one. Somebody tell me where this came from. It's been attributed or credited to Ry Cooder, but I can't. I think it's an actual spiritual. The name of the song is Jesus. Jesus on the Main Line. I think is what it is. I gotta tune the guitar up. Hold on a second. Anyway, "Steal Away" is a. It's also on my Unlawful Assembly record, which if you don't have a copy, I'd sure appreciate it if you could pick one up. They're going to be coming out in vinyl pretty soon. And I just released a record with Rob Curto, my colleague who plays accordion. And we've got the song "Catfish" that I played earlier is on that one. Some of the Okefenokee tunes, and let's see here. This is a kind of a complicated transition. Let's see if I can pull this off. I'm going from a C tuning to a G tuning for the geeks out there. Well, I hit the right notes. Let's see if it's going to stay in tune. Fiddling around just to let the guitar settle in a little bit. Anyway, one of the before I lived in St. Louis, I played with Stephanie Winters in the group The Nudes. I played across the river. I don't even know what town I was in at the point, but there was I remember the name of the college because it was called Parks College, and my name is of course Walter Parks, and. But we stayed in the college put us up in St. Louis. This is in the early '90s, and downtown St. Louis. And the following morning after the concert, I went to the Scott Joplin Museum. Scott Joplin's house is out on Del Mar. I think it's close to downtown, but I haven't been there since I've lived here. And I was always a fan of ragtime music, hence the ragtime banjo that I bought in Jacksonville. And so when I was on the road with Richie Havens, every now and then I'd have a little time off, and I would throw my guitar into an old banjo tuning, a C tuning, and just mess around. I came up with this thing. It's I remember now. I wrote this we were staying for about 3 days in a place called Swiss Cottage, north of, it's a neighborhood, a little town north of London. And so the song had, as you'll hear, it kind of has a little ragtime hop to it, you know. And I called it the London Rag for a while. And it just didn't have anything to do with London other than the fact that that's where I wrote it. And at one point I had returned to the States, and I was driving around in my old beat-up Ford 150 pickup truck, straight six, and as the mountaineers say in North Georgia, you can't kill it. And it's a manual transmission, and I sold it to my brother, but the thing is, I just loved driving that thing around. It got about -4 miles to the gallon, and it's about you would you don't I would be afraid to drive that car in, say, the hippie towns like Asheville or Eugene, Oregon, or something like that, for fear that they would pummel me with organic tomatoes or that kind of thing. But it is not environmentally friendly at all, but it's friendly to me, and it's always friendly to my dogs. They love riding in that thing because it's one of those lover seats. What are they called? You know, where the woman will get real close to the driver, in bench seats, you know. And the dogs love those lover seats, bench seats. They just lay out on them. But anyway, so at one point, I was I used to keep it in the mountains in northeast Georgia, yeah. And I started heading out and taking a country ride, and the engine oil light came on, and oh boy, I got to check the levels. And I reached for that rag under the driver's seat, that red rag. And then I realized I got the name for this song. It's going to be called the Dipstick Rag. Tell them what you want. Jesus on the main line. Tell them what you want. Jesus on the main line. Tell them what you want. Roll them up and tell them what you want. You don't need no number, just tell them what you want. You don't need his number, just call him up and tell him what you want. Got no number, just shout to him and tell him what you want. Call him up and tell him what you want. Avenue, you giving me heart attack. Eddie Skinny, come to Papa. Sunset Boulevard, you're gonna be traffic stopper. sorry about the tempo on that. I kind of was dragging and dragging, and that's a tricky one to play. But it's early in the morning, so that's what you get with me sometimes. If you want just me to be real sparky, you just got to see me play a gig at night. And speaking of that, I am playing a week from last night. That's a terrible way to identify when I'll be playing. This coming Saturday night, I will be playing in Jacksonville, Florida at Mudville. And I think the show starts around 7. Mudville is a club where Beach Boulevard and Atlantic Boulevard sort of split off and do their own thing on the way to the beach. Beach Boulevard goes from downtown Jacksonville, essentially. It's, Beach Boulevard, if we're going to be... Let me tell you about Beach Boulevard, which is US 90, if I'm not mistaken. And you guys can Google this, but I think that Highway 90 starts in West Texas, or terminates in West Texas, down there around Alpine, Texas, or a little bit further. I think it's Highway 90 was the way you would get west from southeastern points, if you go through Texas and all that, back in the day. Highway 90 goes through major towns like Houston and New Orleans and where else? Pensacola, that kind of thing, and Defuniak Springs, that's a big one, and Jacksonville. But it actually dead ends at the Atlantic Ocean around it when it becomes Beach Boulevard, and Atlantic Boulevard is another road that goes to the beach. Y'all don't care about this stuff if you're not from Jacksonville, but anyway, where those two roads split off is where Mudville is, and I like Mudville because there's a great hardware store next to it that I go to called Curry Thomas. The only thing I don't like about it is they got a bunch of animal heads all over it, and I hate all that stuff, but it's a good hardware store. But Ray Lewis promotes shows, and he has been doing it in Jacksonville, Florida for years. He's a buddy of mine. He's always supported my music, and I'm pleased to be going back in there. And also, I has that added benefit of having University of Georgia flags everywhere. For some reason, they're big sponsors of the University of Georgia, and that's where I went to school. I don't really care about all that rah-rah stuff, but it's anybody who's a Florida Gator fan has a hard time being in this room sometimes. But I think everybody's learning to live together a little better down there. So that I enveloped the Jesus on the Main Line into my tune, the Dipstick Rag, and that kind of thing. When I'm in shape, I can just kind of, at nighttime, during the nighttime, when I get in shape, I can play it at that tempo. Let's see, did anybody tell us who wrote, no, we couldn't find that out. But anyway, that's something for y'all to Google tonight. I'm going to do one more tune, although right now I'm not sure what it's going to be. I haven't done this one in a while, and I think I'll play Georgia Rice. I started the broadcast today by, no, I'm going to play Catfish John, actually. I started the broadcast telling y'all that I spoke this morning with my brother who's in Poland right now. He's gone over there to drive a refugee bus from the Ukraine border to deeper into Poland. And I just think that's so meaningful, and I'm so impressed that he's doing that. There's times in our life when we're told that people are not like us. Let's just stay away from them and let them have their own thing. They got themselves into the pickles that the pickles they've gotten themselves in, and it's not up to us to fix their situations. And that's one way of looking at things. And then we can say to ourselves, we can all make mistakes, and at the end of the day, maybe this is just where my Buddhist teachings come in. I think it's a good thing to try to alleviate suffering of creatures and people, and don't be so caught up on judging them by how they got into the situation. And that's where this song comes from. I found this song trying to chase down that song Catfish that I played earlier. And I came upon this one. It's called Catfish John. It's a story about an old black man who was a freed slave, lived under a bridge in the South, and the white folk in town would tell their children, "Don't go down under that bridge. He's just an old slave. You don't know he's a hobo, and you don't know what trouble he's been into and what he's going to get you, trouble he's going to get into." And the white children were like, the white children were like, "I'm going to go down there and meet him, and see what he's like." And as the story goes, it was, they were all glad that they met him, and they took that chance to stretch themselves a little bit. But if we grow up in the South especially, we all have tales like that. And when you finally do kind of cross sides of the tracks, sometimes actually, not just metaphorically, you realize people's similarities. I say it all the time. I am under no misconception that we are all the same. We have similar needs and desires, and how we get there is what adds color in this world. Margot, are you aware that the screen just went out? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm not sure what happened, but anyway, we've gone to we're now on the drone. Yeah, the battery died in the other one. So sorry about that. So this is my last tune, and it's called Catfish John. So Mama said, "Don't go near that river. Don't be hanging around old Catfish John. Come the morning, I'd always be there, walking in his footsteps in the sweet Delta dawn." And Catfish John was a river hobo, living down by the water's edge. I'm so glad I got to know him. Well, I'm proud to call him my friend. Mama said, "Don't go near that river. Don't be hanging around Catfish John. But come the morning, I'd always be there, walking in his footsteps in the sweet Delta dawn." He was born a slave in the town of Vicksburg, traded for a chestnut mare, though he never spoke in anger. Well, his load was hard to bear. Oh, now Mama said, "Don't go near that river. Don't be hanging around Catfish John. footsteps in the sweet Delta dawn. So I'm taking you back to another morning, to a place so long ago, to the sweet magnolia blossom. Cotton fields were white as snow. Mama said, don't go near that river. Don't be hanging around on Catfish John. On the morning I'd always be there, walking in his footsteps in the sweet Delta dawn. Catfish John was a river hobo living down by the water's edge. I'm so glad I got to know him. Well, I'm glad to call him my friend. Mama said, don't go near that river. Don't be hanging around Catfish John. But come the morning, I'd always be there, walking in his footsteps in the sweet Delta dawn. And this concludes another episode of Hymns and Hollers. It's Walter Parks. Done some hymns, mostly spirituals, and did a few hollers. I might not be with you next Sunday morning. I'm going to be on the road doing some research down in the Okefenokee. If I can all possibly put it together, I'll broadcast from that area, but it's the signal's not that great. But I'm interviewing Bill Chesser, who was one of the original Swamp Hollerers. He was recorded in 1944 and archived in the Library of Congress. He's now 90 years old, and he's agreed to talk to me for the second time. And I'll let y'all know how that goes. And as I mentioned last week, if you have any questions or like to know anything about how it was to live out there in the swamp, just text me. Let me know what you think you'd like to know from a person who lived life in a simpler time. That's what I want to know about. I'm Walter Parks. This is called Hymns and Hollers. Check out my new record with Rob Curto called The Swampalachian Trail. and the new one by Walter Parks and the Unlawful Assembly. Spirituals and the songs they inspired. Uh, till the next time, we'll keep you informed. Thanks to uh, all the folks who regularly tune in and folks who um, just stumble upon me by chance. This is I'm taking music from the Okefenokee Swamp and anything that the swamp music inspired, and that's what I bring to you. Bye bye.